welcome. We appreciate everybody for coming in today. Just a quick digital community guidelines. Please make sure to use your raise hand feature if you have any questions, or you can chat in the chat box if you have any relevant comments or thoughts. We would appreciate it, as we want to host and nurture a very respectful environment for everybody can say their thoughts and in a respectful manner. So we'd appreciate it if everybody is able to follow our digital guidelines. And without further ado, we would like to present our presenter for today. His name is Christopher Munoz-Calene. He is from Clark University, and he is the Assistant Director of Mission for Access Inclusion. We welcome Mr. Munoz-Calene for presenting today, and I'd like to hand him the presentation.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen, and in just a moment you should see a slide that says welcome to Clark. Okay, so if I could see a thumbs up or not. Okay, great, thank you. So hi everybody, my name is Chris Munoz-Calene. I'm an admissions counselor at Clark University. We're in Worcester, Massachusetts. And when I was thinking about this presentation, really my own journey through college came to mind, and that's actually kind of where I want to start with why I'm so glad this presentation is being offered. So I'm actually originally from Clearwater, Florida, which is not too far from Tampa. But I ended up going to college on the other corner of the country. So I went to Reed College in Portland, Oregon. This photo is actually, it was the marketing photo, I believe, when I was at Reed. These are all people that I went to college with, which is really funny to see. But when I went to Reed, I really jumped in head first and didn't really have the kind of preparation to keep in mind all of the things that I wanted to share with you today. But I got lucky. When I got to Reed, I had a really great network of support. I had never spoken a word of German in my life, but I decided to be a German major. So that's what I ended up doing. And then I actually got to go abroad. My second year at Reed, I went to Munich for 1 year. And actually the summer before that, I was in Berlin doing an intensive language program. So summer in Berlin, which is way up here. And then I got to spend the year in Munich. And these are opportunities that I really wouldn't have known without taking good advantage of advising. So in this presentation, you'll hear me mention the word advising quite a bit. That was a really big influence in my life, was having mentors who pointed opportunities out to me that I don't think I would have known about on my own. So after my time in undergrad at Reed, I went back to Germany and I did a Fulbright scholarship teaching English at the Ernst Barlach Gymnasium, which is like a high school in Germany. When I entered college, I didn't know what a Fulbright scholarship was. But again, I had really great professors who pointed out opportunities to me and said, there's a thing called Fulbright that if you want to go back to Germany, you might want to apply for. So those kinds of opportunities in advising, I think, are really the magic of going to a college where you really take advantage of the resources and you feel comfortable. And that's kind of where I wanted to begin. So can everyone put in the chat, where are you with your college search? Have you had some acceptances? Are you waiting back for a few schools? So where are you in that part of the process? Because I know we're in March. So if you applied early, you might have heard back from a few schools. So if everyone who would like to wants to put it in the chat, where are they in the process? Okay, someone has got, okay, so acceptances from about a third of the schools. It's great. Congratulations, Elliot. Anyone else? Have anyone heard back from a few schools. Someone's looking really early. That's great, Jalen. I also started early in the search, so that's great that you're doing that, Jalen. Wow, okay, acceptances from 4 Midwest schools. Okay, so someone heard early. So is everyone still choosing kind of where they might want to go to college? Some was accepted to local state school. That's fantastic. Okay, so people might be still weighing their options. Waiting for acceptance is great. Heard from a few schools. Okay, that's exactly the moment that we're in the admissions cycle, is that some heard back from some places, but if you applied a regular decision, you may have some time left. I mean, really until late March, that's when we're releasing our decisions for regular decisions. So there's still a bit of time. One point that I wanted to mention is the letter of award. So when you receive your acceptance letter to a school, my best tip here is to make sure to read every word on that letter is the best way that I can put it. I recently spoke with a student who applied early decision to Clark and wasn't certain of when the deadline was to submit their deposit. And that is all on the letter. I mean, I would say if you have an acceptance letter, that should contain really kind of all the terms and conditions. For us, it's usually on the bottom of the letter, but that'll show you when you need to submit your deposit. And just to clarify the process of depositing, when you receive an admit letter, it's like you're being offered a position in the class, but it's an offer, and then May 1st is usually the deadline that colleges have all agreed that this is the time where you choose one and you secure your spot in the class by depositing. One question that we get a lot, and that I wish I had known when I was applying to college, is that if the cost of the deposit is going to be a barrier, don't be afraid to reach out to your college and ask if it's possible to have the cost adjusted for the deposit. So if you're not certain if you can make the deposit work, because they can really range in cost from anywhere from $200 to $500. I mean, it really depends. It never hurts to ask your admissions counselor if it's possible to adjust the cost of the deposit. And the other thing that I was going to mention is occasionally there are things called conditional acceptances. So this really differs from institution to institution as to what the conditional acceptance is. The best encouragement I can give you is if there's any term or condition, it should be in the admit letter. But if there's anything you're not certain about, just make sure to reach out to your admissions counselor, or if you're not sure who that is, just the general admissions office of your institution, just to make sure you're super clear on what those terms and conditions are. This is something I did not know until I arrived at college, but very likely all of you who've heard back from a college, you have an admissions counselor who's your person that is really responsible for making sure you feel like you know all the information you need to know. So I'm the counselor for Florida and Texas. And all my Florida and Texas students, if they ever have a question, I'm really the point person for them. And I'm never annoyed, if a family has a question or wants to just go over the letter. And don't be afraid to reach out and use admissions counselors like me at, all of your colleges as resources for you. That really is our job. I mean, it's not just to read the application, but it's also to be there for you and make sure that where you are, like right now in the process of choosing your institution, all the way to May 1st when you submit the deposit, that you have someone who can answer any question you have along the way. And that actually brings me to the second point on the PowerPoint slide here, which is about connecting with students and faculty. Like really, this is kind of where the dynamic shifts in college admissions. So if you've heard back from a few institutions, this means now you're choosing which one you want to say yes to. So the institutions that you've been admitted to are all trying to show you why you should go to their institution. Don't be afraid to use me, that whoever the me is in all of the colleges that you've been admitted to make sure that you have a great sense of each school that you've applied to and been admitted to. So I put on here, connecting with students and faculty through virtual and in-person events. There are so many students who reach out to me and say, hey, I would love to connect to a biology professor, or do you have any students who are doing this certain club on campus? And it is my duty as an admissions counselor of an admitted student to connect them. I will say that we can't always make it happen in every case, but it never hurts to ask. So at this point in the process, just make sure that you're using all the resources available to you to get a really strong sense of each institution. So that's actually a question I had for all of you. How does everyone feel about the college choice at this point? Do you have one dream school that you've been admitted to, or are you feeling pretty equally like you're weighing your options at this point? So how are you feeling? Do you feel like you have a dream school, or are you more, I have to weigh my options, I'm not quite sure yet? Feel free to put in the chat. Okay, so someone's satisfied with the school that has accepted. Okay, Elliot, yeah, that's a great point. So I want to speak to Elliot's point in a second. But curious, what are others thinking? Are you pretty set on where you want to go, or are you still, do you feel like you don't have a dream school yet, or how is that? Well, okay, so I will speak to Elliot's point in just a second. So yes, okay, so right, okay. This is really helpful to see. My daughter doesn't have a dream school. Exactly. That I was kind of hoping someone would say something like this. So I just want to share something that was true for me when I was applying to college. That there's not really one piece of advice that I can give that's going to serve everybody to find kind of the right fit. I would say, like, the best tip I can give to you for this point in the process of settling on an institution is to think about the things that do matter to you, and remember the things that matter to you are not going to matter to other people necessarily. As an example, the city that my college was in did not matter to me. I would have gone to Reed if it were in the middle of a cornfield. I mean, it was a bonus that it was in Portland, Oregon, like that was wonderful, but I would have gone to it if it were in the middle of nowhere. The things that mattered to me, like I knew I wanted to go abroad, I wanted to study a foreign language, and I wanted to study literature. If you kind of know the things that matter to you, like you really want this kind of event at your school, you really want a fraternity experience or sorority experience, you really want to go abroad or study business, those factors can help you. But if you're not sure what you're interested in, even that can be a guiding factor. So if you're not sure what you want to study, like maybe you want to focus on how strong is the advising department at your school. If you're not in a particular major yet, like if you're undecided when you're going into college, is there still someone who's going to be there to support you? In the beginning of the presentation, remember I showed the opportunities that I did after college. I didn't know what any of those opportunities were. Like I didn't know what a Fulbright was when I started undergrad. It's really only because I had great advising and professors who pointed things out to me and said, you should really apply for this grant because I think you would enjoy it. That's the only reason why I did all of those things and lived a lot of my life in a different country. So, and that really shaped my experiences, but it's because I had the great advising in the beginning. So I would say, think about the things that really do matter to you. And if you're not sure, don't be afraid to use, again, us, the admissions counselors at the schools. That'll help you figure out kind of what things do speak to you. So my last point that I wanted to mention is that the process of depositing. Again, like I mentioned, if you're not sure if you can afford the final deposit of the school, don't be afraid to reach out to your school and actually learn if there's a way to adjust the amount. But usually we accept deposits electronically. So just make sure by May 1st, that's typically the deadline, that you're submitting the deposit. Okay, so someone said, my daughter knows that she wants to be a dog trainer, and there's only one school in the state. That's exactly the point that I was also hoping someone would say, is usually if you know what you want to do, that can cut out a lot of the thinking or the decision, time. But I want to scroll up to Elliot's point from earlier. Elliot made a great point that it's really hard to decide on where I'll compromise between price and fit. This is one point I was really also hoping someone would say. I think it can be really easy to compare like the final cost of attendance from different institutions. This is really the point about the financial aid award. My best encouragement is to think about kind of what you'll be receiving from each institution. So that's, again, using admissions to connect with professors, connect with students, and then factor that into the cost. I mean, I attended a range of institutions in my life. I've attended a community college, a private liberal arts school, and a state German university. And all were very different experiences, and not good or bad, but just extremely different experiences with different costs of attendance attached to them. So like Elliot's point about like, I'm trying to figure out where's the balance I want to strike between the cost and where I'm getting the most educational experience that I really want to get from my college. Just to keep those factors in mind. I mean, for some people, the price is really the deciding factor, and that is 100% valid if that's what's important to your family. But also keep in mind other aspects of the school, like the resources that are available. How well will you know your professors? Do you have advisors who will point things out to you and give you opportunities to go abroad? I mean, those are things to consider when you're making the final decision. I'm going to pause here and see, are there any questions or things that at this point in the process people had questions about? Like really choosing the school, the deposit, letter of acceptance and financial aid, how to connect with schools. Do people feel like they have a sense of how to connect with the colleges you've been admitted to? I'm sure they're probably emailing you with opportunities to engage, but do you feel like you know how to navigate that? Or is anyone stuck and not sure how to connect with their college? Is anyone attending an admitted student event? That's one thing I was curious about. Okay, so Lisa knows how, that's good, yes. Okay, wait, so I see a couple of no's, okay. Okay, so Utah and Oregon are coming. Okay, so for the people who said yes, that you'll be attending admitted student events, so this is one thing I wanted to convey to you as well. I have in my inbox emails from families that'll be attending our admitted student events, and they have already emailed me to introduce themselves, ask if we can connect when they're on campus. I mean, those are families who really are doing these steps, like they're reaching out, they're getting their bang for their buck, so to speak, in terms of connecting with the schools. Don't be afraid to do that if you're going to be attending an admitted student event. Email your counselor if you want to see if you can have any questions answered in person. if you're already making the effort to go to campus, I mean, why not reach out and see if you can have more one-on-one time with an admissions counselor if you would like some final questions answered, or you want to connect your child with a student on campus. But for the people who said no, they don't know how to connect with their schools, my best tip for you is, I'm just going to type it in the chat. Many institutions will have a pretty general email inbox for their admissions office. So it'll probably be something like admissions@theinstitution.edu. So admissions@clark.edu. I would say go to their undergrad admissions page and look for a general admissions inbox and just send a quick email saying, hi, my name is Chris, I'm an admitted student. I have some questions and would like to connect with a counselor. And that might be a great way to start a conversation, just so you have someone that can be your point person, so that you make sure that you're really getting the most out of the next few months as you're making your final choice. My big tip there is that it'll never hurt to reach out to your counselor and ask for more time with them. I mean, the worst is that they don't have the time, but that's okay. I mean, at least you tried. If you're already admitted, like I said, the dynamic kind of shifts at this point in the process. I mean, it's really about you making sure that you get all the information you need to make the best choice for you. So just so you know, I mean, really, if there's one thing to remember from this part of the presentation, it's just remember there's a dynamic shift right now. Where you're able to use the admissions offices to really make sure that you're getting the information you need before you deposit. So I see a question from Joseph. How do I find someone who can help with how state covered funding on SUNY colleges? Joseph, for that question, I would email likely the financial aid office of your college. And if you know your admissions counselor, like if you know who the me is of your student who applied to college, you can CC the counselor on that email, or you can just email it to both. I have families who do that all the time. If they email admissions, they'll just let me know by just copying me on that email. And then I know to call financial aid and just double check, like, hey, did you get that email from that family? You know, anything that I can help with? It just helps to keep us in the loop. So that's my best tip, is to email the financial aid office and include your counselor. Any other questions about connecting with schools, admitted student events, how to make the most of an admitted student event? Actually, I do have one question, spur of the moment. If anyone has attended an admitted student event so far, what did you think of it? How was your impression of the event? Was it helpful? Or was it not so helpful for you? And why? Because I'm hoping that if there's other people in the audience who will be attending an admitted student event, that they get some. Okay, Lisa says to be determined. You're going shortly, right, in the next weeks. Has anyone attended an event so far, or will be signing up for one? Yeah, Elliot, so you did a online event, and was the online event helpful? And Lisa says, yes, and visiting University of Utah during spring break. Excellent. Are there any schools hosting prospective students out of state? Oh, I'm really glad that you asked that question, Blytet, because this is a tip also that came actually from our office today. If you want to visit a school, but again, financial, the cost will be a barrier, don't be afraid to reach out and ask if there's any funding available. If you just say, I'm an admitted student, I would like to attend a visit. Are there any funds available for a visit? If costs are a barrier, I mean, it doesn't hurt again to reach out and just try and see. So I think, Ted, I think that might answer your question about out-of-state students being hosted. If you're traveling to a different state and it's going to be really expensive, don't be afraid to reach out and ask if there's any kind of scholarship or something like this available. Let me see. So Elliot attended an online event and said it was nice. I made me like the college more, but I don't think I gained any new information. Elliot, that is exactly my impression of some online events. I would say it's really hard to get a real sense for the school. But Elliot, this is a tip for you, but also for everyone else. One thing that we did last spring with our students who were admitted, if they were like, again, I'm the counselor for Florida and Texas, so those students are really far away from Massachusetts and some couldn't visit. But they emailed me and said, can we do some kind of like group Zoom event, like small group with some current students? So I was able to set up like based on majors, like, I don't know, putting 5 students in a Zoom room so they can just talk to each other with our current students. That's really the second point on this slide, is connecting with students or faculty through virtual or in person. I think it's having like the one-on-one conversation that makes a lot of the difference. Sometimes when you're watching a webinar, it's just like information is being given to you, but you can't really engage with it. So that really is kind of the whole idea behind this slide, is that nothing is out of the box. I mean, you can email your admissions counselor and just see what's possible. So because I had a family who reached out and emailed and said, can you set up a Zoom with our child and with some students, I was able to do that. It never hurts to ask with those things. So don't be afraid to reach out and see. Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to make requests. That's the whole point of this slide here, is that the dynamic has shifted. I mean, once you're admitted, you can really make all the requests you want. And the worst is that you'll just hear we can't do that or it's not possible. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. So I'm going to answer, Christina, you had a question up above about how to find out about events. Your institution likely has an admitted student page. So for us, I can actually, I will show you just to give you a current example. So I'll switch the screen share just so that you're able to see a current example of what you might want to look for. Okay, so this is our admitted student page. Just to give you an example, you'll see that we do put a deposit button just to make it really clear for people on how to submit the deposit. But Christina, this is to your earlier question about where to find the events. So we do put like register for a visit. And if you just click this, you'll see all of our events. And we even have the admitted student webinars on the same page. So I would say try to find whatever version of this page is at your institution for admitted student events. And usually they'll have them all listed. But you'll want to look for in-person and then any kind of virtual ones if in-person is not possible. But you'll see, I mean, we have really a huge range. Most schools will offer some kind of mix of in-person and virtual admitted events. And you'll see even with the in-person ones, we have quite a range. But I would try to find this admitted page that exists for your college. If you're not sure where to look, again, really the central resource is whoever I am in the offices of all the schools that your child has been admitted to or you've been admitted to. You'll have some counselor at your colleges that'll be able to point you in the direction of this page for their school. And
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I'm just gonna switch back to the PowerPoint because Christina, you had another question about the kinds of requests or questions that you should be doing, which actually brings me to, well, I'll go back to this slide. The big thing that I would keep in mind just for general requests to be asking, it goes back to the choosing your college. I mean, when I say connecting with students or faculty, it's that point about what are the things that are going to matter to you. So if you're undecided and you're not sure what major you might want to study, I would recommend really looking into the advising at the school. If you want to go abroad, see if you can connect with a study abroad office. How accessible is it? If you want to do literature as your major or business, I mean, whatever you want to study, if you can connect with a student or faculty member in that department, once you make that connection, like, so I'm an admissions counselor, you know, I can be the first point of connection, but I'm not an instructor at the university. So if you wanted to hear how the actual instruction is from a student's perspective or a teacher's perspective, I would need to connect you with them so you could hear directly rather than hear me talk about it. So that's really where we're handing you off to connect with the direct people that you would actually be meeting during your time in college. But just for general questions that I think are great to ask, I'll put them in the chat. How well do you know your professors? How accessible are, and then I would say fill in the blank, your professors, your advisors. By asking about how well your student knows these people or how well you're connecting with them, you'll get a sense for how resourceful the school is and how accessible the actual resources are. So, okay, I see a question from Joseph. My concern is my daughter wants to go to Cobleskill for dog training and has been accepted to Jefferson. So Joseph, that's a great example of not knowing, like, the question about the costs and how it would be split. There's probably some kind of state agreement there. That's where I would connect with financial aid from these institutions. Those specific questions, usually a phone call is great for those kinds of questions because you can have a quick back and forth on the phone. But Christina, your question about what kinds of questions or requests you should be doing, if there's any way that you can meet or go on a special tour, like we had a family who their child was really interested in art and they wanted to see if they can get a tour of the art building. And I was like, yeah, we have a studio art student who will be in the office that day. And Cece just took the family on a tour and was able to talk about like how she actually uses that art space on campus. Like those are the moments that really make the difference, I think, for a lot of people. Not just seeing the place on tour, but actually getting to connect and make that special request. So that's one really big tip I guess I have is just think about what is that special request that would be helpful for you where you can have a one-on-one. Is it about the art building? Is it about study abroad? Is it about the career services? Like find out what those things are that matter to you and then find someone who can talk to you about that and how they use that space or how they offer that service if they work there. So I hope that helps give you a point to look into next is really find out what your interest is.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, these are things I did not know to do when I was applying to college and choosing my institution. So I really wish I had known that so then I could have gotten a more clear sense. But I'm going to move on to something that I think is, I can say having been at Clark for a few years, this is something that I am glad to have the chance to tell all of you ahead of time. When you submit your deposit in May, so when you choose a college, there's a lot that needs to be done in the summer before you step foot on campus and then start your classes. The good news is your college will really likely make it very clear as to what needs to be done, and it's not all at once. Really over the course of the months, you'll get a checklist or some kind of portal that you log into that tells you what are the things that need to be submitted. I thought of like 4 categories that I just want to put on your radar early on. So if you have a pen and paper or you have notes on your computer, I would type out these 4 areas of life. The first is residential life and housing, or dorms. I will say the best thing you can do for yourself if you really want to have a top choice of your dorm is just pay super close attention to when are the deadlines for the housing forms, or is there a roommate meetup that's happening online where I might be able to choose a roommate, or is there a roommate form I fill out? Every year we we usually have some students who somehow miss all those emails and they don't have their top choice of a dorm, but it's so easy to avoid that as long as you just keep an eye on your email and look for these kinds of forms that'll be sent out once you're deposited. Again, your college will probably make it very, very clear. There'll be a checklist, there'll be an annoying amount of emails, but this is just something that I know is really important to a lot of families, so I want to highlight it. At Clark, we always host like a virtual Zoom roommate potential meetup, and the goal is to have students go into rooms and connect with each other and see if they want to be roommates. But we actually have a form that's like the housing preferences that you fill out early in the summer, and then you can rank the dorms that you want to live in, and that helps our office then. If we have an early enough deadline, then our office has enough time to match everyone with their top choices and with their roommate choices. So my central tip there is just keep a really close eye out for, I know that specifically is really important to students. The dorm was probably the #1 thing that I was interested in when I found out I was going to my college. So just keep a really close eye on it. And if you don't hear anything, don't be afraid to ask, when that process begins. The second point, and definitely feel free to jot these down if you're with me here, but health services. My colleagues in the health office at Clark are probably like cheering me on from across the campus right now, because this is one form that students can often miss in the process when they're coming into college. If you're going to a residential school, they might request some kind of health documents. Just good to be aware of that as we're heading into May 1. And just be aware of that there might be some forms that you need to send over. If you keep to the deadline that the college gives you, it'll just help our end, like the campus, and making sure that everything is set for when you and your student arrive to campus in the fall. So just keep an eye out, like maybe health services from your college will be reaching out to you. And Christina, you had a question. When you say roommate preference, is that a person you prefer to be with, someone who has the same major, etc.? Yes, so I'll just say how we do it at Clark, and you might find something similar at your schools. When students have deposited here, we have a process where we send a form out that's like the roommate survey. And it asks, are you tidy or a little more maybe messy in your room living? Do you wake up early, or are you going to bed at 2 a.m.? It's really to get the lifestyle habits of the students so that we can match them with a compatible roommate, so that we don't match a night owl who gets into their homework at 1 in the morning with someone who has lacrosse practice at 6 in the morning. So we try to do some compatible roommate matching. But some colleges have things like affinity housing or special themed dorms. Like some schools have like science fiction, Dungeons and Dragons style dorms. Others have like mad science dorms or film studies dorms. I would say that's why I put residential life and housing on the top, because I know that's so central to the students' experience, is where they live and who their roommates are. And it's like your first community in college. So just keep an eye out in case there are interesting housing options that maybe are a little out of the box that you need to like send an application in for. You definitely don't want that to slip through the cracks. So just keep a close eye on that. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, like I said, the dorm's the first community that you have when you arrive in college. So definitely keep an eye out for that. The third is orientation. I'm actually going to show you something that I really hope you all can look into your colleges and see if you offer anything like this. But there's something called pre-orientation programs that now that I've worked at a college for a few years, I'm a huge fan of, and I didn't know they existed before. So these are some of our students. Actually, I just saw these, Rebecca and Sobia. We were all in the office today. Three of these students work in admissions, so I know them really well. In this photo, they are before Clark even started in their first semester. So pre-orientation means you come a little bit early, like before the semester actually begins. And this program that they're part of is called the ACE program. It's for first generation college students and students of color. So if all of these students are either first in their family to go to college or they are students of color. Now, I have an example of what this is on our program, but for Clark, this pre-orientation program is most of August. So like they come literally 3 weeks before the semester actually begins, and it's free. They live in a dorm, they have food. I mean, all of that is covered by the college, and it's academically and professionally focused. So they have courses, they get the lay of the land for what does it mean to be in a college. I'm always there with the students when we have a dinner with them and all the other staff and faculty who identify as first generation or people of color. So they really get a network before anyone else even gets to campus. And I will just say that these ACE groups are super close knit. We actually do a graduation for them at the end of their 4 years, which is amazing. It's like probably one of my favorite things that I get to do. And what's really cool is that like one of our students, this is Henley, they were in this program when they came into Clark, and now they're a mentor through the program. So these, like, I just want to say, don't underestimate these pre-orientation programs. They can totally shape a student's experience, connect them with mentors, and then give them their own mentorship experience when they're in college, helping newer students transition in. So my tip for all of you is just to remember this word pre-orientation program. So if you have a notepad, to write that down and just ask, whoever, again, the me is of your institution, your admissions counselor, do you have any pre-orientation programs or anything? If your student is first in their family to go to college, or if you're part of an underrepresented minority, these are really great ways to get a network early on in your time in college. And they're really often free. I mean, for us, the students come in 3 weeks early and it's to no extra cost for them. The last thing I want to mention, just in like the summer before you go to college, is just keep an eye out in your email inbox for academic advising and course selection emails. At Clark, you have a summer advisor. So if someone, it could be me, it could be someone else from a different office, will reach out to the students and say, hello, welcome to Clark. We would like to set up a Zoom meeting just to talk about which classes you would like to take. And in those meetings, we always make sure that, the residential life forms are submitted, the housing forms are submitted, anything like this, health forms have been submitted. So those are really, really good catch-all meetings where I can sit down on Zoom, like I have the student in front of me, and we can talk about what courses they're going to take and which forms they might want to fill out if they haven't filled them out yet. So keep an eye out in your email inbox for anything like this, because that's really the only way that we have to communicate with students in the summer is over email. So definitely keep an eye on those inboxes, and because there could be an appointment that we're actually trying to set with you, just to make sure that when you get to campus, you know what your class schedule is, you know who your roommate is, you know the basics of where you need to go. So the last thing I'll say is just affinity and identity-based clubs. I will just share one different screen And this is, so Alex, this is when he was a first-year student. He took part in the ACE program. And that's, again, our pre-orientation program for students of color and first-generation college students. And Alex really took part in a ton of affinity-based and identity-based clubs. And I will just pull up an example of kind of how that has shaped up for Alex. So I'm going to share. So this is a Instagram that some of our students run. And again, this is the ACE, that's the pre-orientation program from the year that Alex took part in 2020. This is 4 years ago, so for the grad year of 2022. But one thing that Alex did that I think was really helpful for him was he connected with a lot of student organizations on campus. So this is Alex 2 years later as a junior.
Hello everyone, my name is Alex Nazaire. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm a junior at Clark. I'm from Maryland and Haiti, but I grew up overseas in Rwanda and Cameroon, so I like to call a bunch of different places home. I'm currently majoring in combined languages, those being Spanish and Chinese, with a minor in economics. Outside of academics, I am part of a couple of multicultural organizations, such as the Black Student Union, along with Khadijah, serving as Assistant Secretary, the Latin American Student Organization, along with Dominica, serving as the Secretary, Caribbean African Student Association. I serve as an equity and inclusion representative of the student council that we have. And I'm also part of a salsa dancing club on campus and was a former athlete. I used to play basketball and tennis.
Okay, so what I love about Alex's statement there and everything that he says, he lists like 3 different multicultural organizations that he's part of. And if you heard, he has a leadership position in every single one of them. I think it's because he took part in ACE, the pre-orientation program. He found his friend group when he came to Clark, and he really has flourished during his time here and is now a leader on campus. He's in a salsa dancing team. He went abroad. Like, he, to me, is an example of a student who took advantage of the advising. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my own story when I went to college. Find your advisors. Don't be afraid to ask them questions. You're not bothering them. And see what, like, don't be afraid to bug your colleges is really, like, if there has to be a tagline for this presentation, because it can lead to you discovering really great opportunities. Alex was actually awarded a critical language fellowship, so he's able to go abroad and learn more about Chinese in a foreign country. And again, that reminded me so much of my own experience of going abroad, because I had professors who were able to tell me about things that I had no idea existed. So that, for me, concludes my presentation for things to pay attention to as you're choosing your college, but also in the summer when you're settling in. Really, again, open the email. Don't be afraid to check in with your advisors, and don't be afraid to make special requests if there's something that's going to be useful for you. But I will turn it over to all of you if you have any questions. I know we're in the last minutes, but if there's any last thoughts or questions, I'm happy to help. And I'll turn off my screen share here. Oh, I do see one question I didn't answer. Bly Tet says, do scholarship recipients get first preference on housing selections? That can depend on the school. For us, there's no difference in financial aid or scholarships in the order that the students have their preferences. It can depend on what year you are at Clark. So you kind of get seniority as you move higher and higher in the institution. Seniors get first pick of dorms, that kind of thing. But I would say if there's one preference that impacts your student, it's as long as you meet the deadline. Like, that's why I put Res Life super high up on the list. We're definitely gonna do our very best to serve the students, especially when they've reached the deadline first, and then we'll do our best to reach those after. But if you reach the deadline for submitting your forms, of course, we're gonna do our best to serve you there. Joseph said, is there a way I can save this or any way I can contact you for more information? Yeah, absolutely. I'll put my email in the chat. And you're always welcome to write and ask questions. I will do my best. If you have any help like navigating a college website or something, I'll do my best to find out whoever whoever the version of me is at your school as well. Well, thank you all for attending. I know there's so many Zoom presentations in the world that we live in now, but this is one presentation that I think I really wish I would have had when I was applying to college, really in the senior year when you're moving in after making your decision. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope you now know like what things to look for in the next months and just to be empowered to ask for those special requests. I promise you're not annoying your college. I mean, if you are, it doesn't matter. You know, do what you can to make sure you're getting all the information you need. Yeah.